American exceptionalism. It's a term that is embedded into our national identity, and it's not without reason that this term exists. After all, we were the ones who discovered and unearthed the bedrock of personal freedoms and liberty in the Declaration of Independence, in our Bill of Rights, upon which our republic stands. These freedoms helped to attract to our nation the greatest minds from around the world. America rescued the globe from fascism, real fascism, in World War II, then helped to rebuild the nations of Germany and Japan rather than plunder them and leave them in hovels, as has been the historical precedent by most conquering nations. We helped protect nations from the cancer of communism and ultimately defeated the Soviet Union. Our inventions, everything ranging from the refrigerator to the internet, has raised the standard, helped to raise the standard of living around the world, and has lifted billions of people out of abject poverty. For over a century, America has been the beacon of light and hope for people around the globe. The American dreams reverberates both at home and perhaps even more importantly and loudly in distant lands. American exceptionalism. There are reasons that this phrase has come into existence. We have much to be proud of in the United States of America. The question that I pose today, is it merely an expression akin to the greatest thing since sliced bread? Is it just a de facto piece of our national identity, or does it still today express reality? I still have faith in America, in our principles. Our Bill of Rights is probably the most sacred parchment in the history of humanity. And as long as personal liberties and freedoms undergirds our democracy, I have faith that we as a nation will last. However, let's take an objective look of the America of today. Only tiny Pacific Island nations, as well as oil-rich Kuwait, have populations with a greater percentage of obesity. Wherein 19th century France, extra fat indicated wealth and prosperity, given all the American inventions that have made food and caloric intake so easily accessible, obesity is no longer looked upon as a source of pride. We have a major opiate addiction, creating tremendous amounts of misery for families and lots of localities around our country. This, coupled with being an overweight nation, additionally costs us billions of dollars a year in healthcare bills, when we're already $24 trillion in debt and printing money to no end to help cover corona bills. The pillars of our communities, which used to bond us together, like the church, like Christianity, are today mocked. I'm not even religious, but the idea of trying to tear something down that has utility, that contributes to the greater good of society, just because you disagree with it, is the definition of evil. Let's just hope that the fires of Portland, which use Bibles as their source of fuel, illuminate, however momentarily, the black beating heart of totalitarianism at the center of their movement. We have a growing group of terrorists on the left-hand side of the aisle attempting to extort an end to the system which provided so much prosperity via the use of violence and the threat of it. And the mainstream media completely ignores or excuses their evil acts, cheering them on, hoping to use them as their instrument to regain power. Meanwhile, those who generally do a decent job of keeping the peace are being physically attacked, blinded with lasers, excoriated by the media, yelled at in the streets, and backstabbed by their own leftist mayors who act as their police commissioners, as well as the virtue signaling elite, who, of course, can afford their own private security. Rumors that 2 + 2 = 5 are circulating around social media, and the shutdown stem movement was not just a Black Lives Matter hashtag, but they are now advancing the cause in an effort to rid our school curriculum of math and science. So, I'm guessing, so that it can be supplanted by their preferred Marxist ideology. If you can't add 2 plus 2 together, and math can equal whatever someone with the power to cancel you or with the threat of violence wants, how in the world are we going to be able to travel into space? Or merely arrive via plane to a defined destination rather than end up in the ocean? Much less make a cell phone call to a 10-digit number. If they can convince us that 2 plus 2 equals 5, they've upended our sanity almost enough to put them into positions of power. Whereas in other countries, borders conformed generally to ethnic and tribal lines, and the UN has been greatly criticized of the division of the Middle East post-World War I, as the borders drawn left various ethnic groups battling each other in countries with suddenly heterogeneous populations. For example, the Kurds versus the Sunnis and the Shiite in Iraq. To contrast that, American exceptionalism helped to unite all ethnicities from around the globe in our great melting pot under a framework of personal liberties and the idea that all men are created equal. Where people like Martin Luther King desired not to be judged by the color of their skin, but rather by the content of his character. Today's radicals want to once again divide us along racial lines, for one's worth to be determined by the amount of melanin in their skin, by the historical victimhood of his ancestors, and encouraging others to take on that victimhood suffered by distant relatives to excuse their own inaction and lack of success. Today, American exceptionalism is in great peril. So, what can we do? The only thing that we control are our own actions individually. For example, we alone have agency over what we consume as food, and the choice of whether or not to ingest medications to dull the pain that life inevitably brings into being. We decide whether we stand up against those wishing to tear our nation apart, or to place placards in our windows that we subscribe to their hateful and divisive ideological movement in an effort to have these panes of glass hold back the elements tomorrow as the real storm of hatred and poisonous ideology grows stronger around us. We are the same nation that defeated the Nazis and communists, and yet, like many organisms, we might ultimately end up dying of internal cancer that we have allowed to grow. A disease that the mainstream media and our failing educational systems have inflamed. We have the chance today to reclaim the banner of American exceptionalism and to live up to that creed. But it forces us to take action, to take responsibility for our own personal decisions, whether that be what we put into our bodies, how we spend our time and our days, or whether we bow down to the cancel culture and the threat of violence and allow that faction to achieve the critical mass and their desire to end American exceptionalism permanently. It is a battle between good and evil, between right and wrong, and we must take action today to ensure that the banner of American exceptionalism flies with the American flag well into the future. Peace and blessings to everyone out there. Please share this video, give it a thumb up on YouTube, and subscribe to the channel if you're new. Leave me a comment and let me know what you guys think. Peace and blessings to everybody out there.